Okay, this is going to be the pre-polish. Then we're going to bend the stem, do a light sanding, and a final polish. And then we will be well and truly finished with the stem. Here it is, ready to go. And the wheels that we're going to use here are a very firm, fully sewn, you can about use this as a car tire, and a green compound, which is relatively coarse. It'll give you a different final result than if you finely sand and then start with a milder abrasive compound. That's more of a Danish look. You'll get a crispier finish. You want to emulate the way the English factories did it, which was a little heavy-handed at times, and they would kind of gently round some edges, but there's a qualitative difference in the finish that results from using green to start with some heavy pressure, as opposed to fine sanding up to 1,000 or something and then using a final polish of a fine grit. It's very subtle, but collectors are very fussy people. And here's something that I didn't invent by any means, but came up with, that is a major aid to shining the crease behind the button. Now, years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I made a video about getting into that area, and I expounded on using, and I don't even see it, I guess I don't even have it anymore, a shaggy wheel that had a bunch of strings on it that would get caught in the cracks. And that did work. I didn't tell anybody the wrong thing, but those wheels, they would wear out very quickly because the strings would cut off or pull off, and then you'd have to re-rake it. And so I was burning through wheels, and I came up with this. This is an unsewn wheel. You can buy them that have no stitching whatsoever. This one actually did in the beginning. It had one row. I just cut it out. But you can get unstitched wheels. Then take a leather punch and put 6 holes in there, and in thirds, and waxed thread, the kind that shoemakers use. Waxed cotton thread, and tie it off. Those knots will never come undone. That's what wax does to knots. And that will lend just enough flexibility to this, but it'll keep it intact, that when spun at a high RPM, and you got to crank it up. What are we doing here? We got to crank it to a pretty high speed, and it then becomes fairly rigid as a result of its own centrifugal force. Angular momentum is going to stretch that thing tight, and it allows us to approach the wheel in this way and actually polish the crease like so. And it works like a champ. It only takes a second. You don't have to mess around with rakes and strings and the other stuff that I advocated years ago. So I'll hit that real quick just to show you how it works. Again, this is a noisy machine. The vacuum is, but nothing much I can do about that. My apologies in advance. Again, I don't know, I'm not sure what you can see on the camera like this, but That is basically a finished crease in the time that it took to describe it. And no more work needs to be done to get that polished all the way up to where the two planes intersect. And you can then polish the stem without needing, you don't need a red or a finer version of this. It's not necessary. You're trying to get in there one time and that'll do the job. So I'm now going to change to this stiff stitched wheel, hit up the rest of the stem, then we're going to bend it, lightly sand it, and final polish. And that will be the end of the stem portion of the project. We'll move on to the stummel after that. Okay, at the very end there, you saw me turn the speed of the buffer down and actually get a little heavy and sloppy on the edges. That was to emulate the Dunhill trademark look in profile. So this is now ready to bend. We'll lightly sand it and then shine it up and we're done.